I never thought I'd be the guy whose life would unravel so spectacularly. My name is Jake, and I was just your average husband living in the suburbs of Chicago with my wife, Amanda, and our golden retriever, Max. We had what I thought was a solid marriage. We'd been together for nearly 8 years, shared a cozy little home, and built a life together that, on the surface, seemed picture perfect. But like they say, it's always the ones closest to you who can deliver the most profound betrayals. In the months leading up to the collapse, I noticed subtle changes in Amanda's behavior. At first, I brushed them off as the stress of her job. She's an interior designer, and with her demanding clients, late nights became the norm. When she started coming home later and later, I told myself it was just work. But there was a nagging feeling in my gut, a sense that something was off, an odd vibe that I couldn't quite put my finger on. She was distant, and the affection we once shared started to dwindle. Our date nights became fewer and far between, and I found myself alone more often with Max, who was always eager to lick away my worries. Then there was the night that everything changed. I came home early from work, hoping to surprise her with dinner. I had picked up some of her favorite takeout from that Thai place we both loved, and I had a bottle of her favorite wine chilling in the fridge. I walked in the door, ready to share a meal and some quality time. Instead, I was greeted by a scene that would shatter my world. Max was growling from behind the living room door. It was an unusual sound. He was normally friendly and wagging his tail at the first sign of anyone. I pushed the door open, and what I saw made my heart drop. There was Amanda wrapped in the arms of another man. My mind raced and my heart pounded as I took in the sight, her head thrown back in laughter, the way they were leaning into each other, an intimacy that should have belonged to us. But instead it was shared with someone else. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. Max. I shouted, calling him to my side as the realization hit me like a freight train. The growl he had given wasn't from any random neurotic behavior. It was his way of guarding me, of warning me about the betrayal happening right under my nose. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, frozen in shock. They both turned to me, and the look on Amanda's face was a mix of horror and guilt. Jake, she stammered, but I didn't need to hear any of her lies. The truth was laid bare in front of me. I turned on my heel and left, storming out to the porch, gripping my phone tightly, fighting the urge to throw it against the wall. My mind was racing, trying to process what I had just witnessed. I couldn't breathe, my chest felt tight, and the betrayal felt like a weight slowly sinking me into despair. I paced back and forth in the yard, with Max by my side, his warm presence a comfort amid the chaos of my thoughts. I could hear Amanda behind me, her footsteps hesitant, but nothing she said could erase the image burned into my mind. I knew that I had to confront her, had to get some answers. I couldn't let her weave her web of lies without a response. When I finally turned to face her, anger coursed through my veins. Everything I thought I knew was crumbling. "What the hell, Amanda?" I shouted, and with that outburst I could feel the dam inside me breaking. I needed to know why, how she could do this to us. Her reaction was astonishing. Rather than take responsibility, she tried to downplay it. "It's not what it looks like, Jake. I was just what? Having a little fun." I interjected, incredulous. The excuses began pouring out of her like a waterfall, each more ridiculous than the last. She claimed it was a misunderstanding, that it was just a friend from work who was helping her with a project. The audacity. As if I was just supposed to accept her flimsy explanations without question. But deep down, I knew this wasn't about misunderstandings. This was about betrayal, and the hurt that came with it was overwhelming. I stood there, grappling with the reality of my failing marriage, my heart heavy with the weight of her deceit. What I didn't know then was how all of this would shape my next steps, how it would ignite a fire in me I never knew existed. I was left with a choice to make, and the path ahead was fraught with emotion, pain, and eventually, maybe even a hint of revenge. I could feel the anger brewing, and I knew I would not let this slide without consequences. But first, I needed to navigate the storm of my emotions. What would come next? How would I find my way through this labyrinth of heartbreak and betrayal? It was time to reflect on what I truly wanted. I spent the rest of the evening in a daze. After my confrontation with Amanda, I couldn't bear to be in the same house with her. Every breath I took felt heavy, burdened by her betrayal. I grabbed Max's leash and took him for a long walk around the neighborhood. The cool air hitting my face felt like a much-needed slap to my senses. I needed clarity. I needed to think. As we walked, I reflected on our life together, how we met at a mutual friend's wedding, the laughter we had shared, the late-night talks that had once seemed so important to us. But now all of that felt tainted. I couldn't shake the image of her with that other man and the way her laughter rang in my ears. My mind raced with questions, each one more painful than the last. How long had this been going on? Was she in love with him? Or was he just a passing fling? The night dragged on and I found myself sitting on a bench in the park, staring at the stars twinkling above. Max lay at my feet, sensing my turmoil. He had always been more than just a pet to me. He was a companion, a source of comfort. I scratched his ears absent-mindedly, grateful for his unwavering loyalty. I couldn't help but wonder if he had sensed something was wrong before I did. How could I have been so blind? When I finally returned home, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Amanda was sitting in the living room, her tear-streaked face a mixture of regret and defiance. She looked up when I entered, her eyes pleading for understanding. But there was no understanding to be had, not yet. I couldn't stand the sight of her. I grabbed my phone and went to the bedroom, determined to ignore her until I could figure out what to do. It wasn't long before I found myself scrolling through social media, looking for a distraction. But the more I scrolled, the more I realized how isolated I felt. Friends and family posted pictures of their happy moments, their perfect lives, and here I was, battling the betrayal of the woman I thought I knew. I felt angry, sad, and utterly alone. That's when a thought struck me. A plan began to form in my mind. I didn't want to just sit back and let Amanda walk all over me like I was some kind of fool. I wanted to take control of this situation, to show her that I wasn't going to be a doormat. I didn't know exactly what that would look like yet, but I felt a surge of defiance brewing inside me. The next day was a blur of work and half-hearted conversations with coworkers. I was distracted, my mind constantly drifting back to the events of the previous night. I couldn't focus on anything. My thoughts spiraled around the betrayal, the anger, and the sting of Amanda's lies. I kept replaying her excuses. In my head, her voice sounding increasingly hollow with every repetition. I needed to confront her again, but this time I wanted to come equipped with evidence. I needed to know for sure if she was lying or if there was some shred of truth in her words. So I decided to do something I had never done before. I would track her movements. After work, I followed her to a cafe a few blocks from our house. I parked nearby and waited, my heart racing with anxiety and adrenaline. I watched as she entered the cafe, her head held high, confidence radiating off her. But then I saw him, the same man I had caught her with. They sat at a corner table, laughing and leaning in close as if they were in their own little world. My stomach churned. It felt like a knife twisting deeper into my chest. I couldn't sit back and let this happen. I snapped a few photos with my phone, feeling a mix of anger and satisfaction at having proof. I didn't want to stoop to this level, but I needed to know the extent of her betrayal. The images burned into my memory, and I felt a surge of adrenaline as I plotted my next move. When I got home that night, the weight of what I had witnessed was oppressive. I needed to confront Amanda again, but this time I would have the upper hand. I couldn't wait to see her reaction when I revealed her lies. My heart raced with anticipation, but it was mixed with fear of how this confrontation would unravel and what it would mean for our future. As I prepared for the showdown, I reflected on the emotional turmoil I was in. I was angry, yes, but there was also a sadness that lingered, a deep sense of loss for the relationship I had cherished. The trust we once had been shattered, and I now stood at a crossroads. In the depths of my heart, I longed for the love we once shared, but I also knew that I couldn't allow myself to be a victim in this situation. I was done living in her shadow, done being the unsuspecting husband while she carried on with her double life. Whatever happened next, I was determined to reclaim my power, to take control of my narrative, and to confront the ugly truth head-on. Tomorrow would be the day I laid it all out on the table. I was ready to face Amanda and unveil the secrets she had thought she could keep hidden. I felt the fire building inside me, a drive to demand the truth and reclaim my dignity. The days of being passive were over. It was time for me to stand up for myself, and I was prepared to do whatever it took to push back against her betrayal. The next day felt like an eternity. I hardly slept, tossing and turning, replaying the confrontation in my mind like a broken record. I kept telling myself that I needed to remain calm, to gather my thoughts clearly before I faced Amanda. But I was anything but calm. I was a storm raging within, ready to unleash my fury at the first opportunity. After work, I returned home and sat on the couch, staring at the door, waiting for her arrival. Max lay at my feet, sensing my unease and offering comfort with his warm presence. I absent-mindedly scratched behind his ears, trying to collect my thoughts, but it was no use. The tension in the air was almost palpable. I had made the decision to confront Amanda with the evidence I had gathered, and I was determined to make her face the truth. Finally, I heard the sound of keys jangling at the door. My heart pounded in my chest as Amanda stepped inside, her face lighting up at the sight of Max. "Hey, buddy," she exclaimed, her voice dripping with that fake sweetness she often used. But she didn't notice me sitting on the couch, shrouded in shadows, arms crossed tightly over my chest. "Jake," she said, a note of surprise in her voice when she finally turned to see me. Her smile faltered, and I could see her demeanor shift as she realized I was not in a cheerful mood. "Sit down, Amanda. We need to talk," I said, my voice steady but laced with an underlying anger. Her eyes widened and she took a seat across from me, a nervous expression creeping over her face. "What's this about?" she asked, trying to keep her demeanor calm, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. "Let's cut to the chase. I saw you yesterday," I said, pulling out my phone and displaying the photos I had taken at the cafe. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins as I handed her the phone. "You and him, laughing, getting close. How long has this been going on?" She glanced at the screen, her face paling as she registered the evidence I presented. "Jake, wait, I can explain," she started, but I cut her off. "Explain? You don't need to explain anything. The pictures speak for themselves. You've been lying to me. What else haven't you told me?" I leaned forward, my heart racing as I watched the realization wash over her face. "No, it's not what you think. We were just," she stammered, desperately searching for an excuse. "He's just a colleague who was helping me with a project, that's all, I swear. Really, because it didn't look just like that to me," I shot back, frustration boiling over. "You call that a professional relationship? Leaning into him like that? Laughing as if you've got some inside joke that I'm not a part of? Do you think I'm stupid, Amanda?" Tears welled up in her eyes, and I could see she was trying to hold back a flood of emotions. "I didn't want you to find out like this," she said, her voice trembling. "I was going to tell you, I promise." "Tell me what?" "That you've been sleeping with him, that you've been betraying me for who knows how long. What do you expect me to believe?" I snapped, my chest heaving with anger. "You can't just lie your way out of this, not anymore." Her facade began to crack, and I could see the panic rising within her. "Please, Jake, I love you." "It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything," she cried, her voice rising in pitch. "Love? You think this is love?" I shot back, incredulous. "You've disrespected me in the worst way possible. You've destroyed everything we built together, and now you want to play the victim. You think you can just weasel your way out of this with a few tears." The air between us was thick with tension, and I could feel the simmering anger bubbling beneath the surface. With every word, every excuse she threw at me, I felt more resolved to take control of the situation. I was done being the one who was hurt. It was time for me to reclaim my power. "I don't know what I thought this would look like, Amanda, but I never thought it would end like this," I said, my voice quieter now but still firm. "I can't trust you anymore. You've shattered that trust." "I'll do anything to make it right," she begged, her tone shifting from defensive to pleading. "We can work this out. I can cut ties with him. I'll change, I swear. Just give me another chance." "Another chance," I echoed, feeling a bitter laugh rising in my throat. "Do you really think I can just wipe away the past with a simple promise? You've made your choice, Amanda. You chose him over me." Her face crumpled and the tears spilled down her cheeks. I felt a pang of sadness for the woman I once loved, but I couldn't allow that to sway me. The hurt was too fresh, the betrayal too deep. I need time to think, and right now, I can't be here with you, I said, standing up and turning my back to her. You need to leave. I need space. I didn't want to see her desperation, the way she clung to the possibility of fixing things when it was clear to me that it was too late. I walked out to the backyard, the weight of the confrontation pressing down on me. Max followed me outside, his loyal presence grounding me as I paced the yard. The emotional fallout from the confrontation felt like a landslide, burying me beneath the weight of my feelings. I had confronted her, but the anger still churned within me. I couldn't help but wonder why I had ever let her treat me this way. I should have been the one with the upper hand, the one demanding respect. And then it hit me: revenge. While the thought initially felt foreign and unsettling, it began to take root in my mind. I wasn't just going to sit by while she got away with this. I wanted her to feel the pain she had inflicted on me. I wanted her to realize that betrayal comes with consequences. With each passing moment, the fire of determination intensified. I was ready to take my power back, whatever my next steps would be. I knew I wouldn't let her walk away unscathed. I was done being the victim. It was time for me to become the architect of my own narrative. The next chapter of my life was about to unfold, and I was ready to write it on my terms. The days following my confrontation with Amanda were a whirlwind of emotions. I felt as though I was riding a roller coaster, with peaks of anger and valleys of despair. I spent most of my time processing everything that had happened, trying to find clarity amid the chaos. The hardest part was the silence that filled our home. The laughter and warmth that once echoed through the halls had been replaced by an unbearable tension. Max sensed the change too. He stayed close, his comforting presence a reminder that I wasn't entirely alone. I went through the motions of work and daily life, but my mind constantly drifted back to Amanda and her infidelity. I had made the decision to take control of my narrative, but what did that really mean? I knew I couldn't just lash out in anger. I needed a plan. I wanted to show her that betrayal comes with consequences, but I also wanted to ensure I wouldn't lose myself in the process. After a few days of contemplation, I decided to reach out to a few friends for advice. I hadn't shared the details of my situation with many people, but I needed support. One of my closest friends, Dave, had been through a nasty divorce a couple of years back, and I knew he could offer me some perspective. We met at a bar after work, and I poured my heart out to him over a couple of drinks. "Man, that sounds brutal," he said, shaking his head in empathy. "I can't believe she would do that to you. Have you thought about what you want to do next?" I took a sip of my beer, the bitterness matching the anger swirling inside me. "I want her to know how much she's hurt me. I want her to feel the weight of the betrayal she inflicted," I replied, my voice laced with raw emotion. "Revenge can be a slippery slope, Jake," he warned, leaning forward. "You might think it will make you feel better, but it could also backfire. You need to focus on yourself right now." His words struck a chord with me. Maybe revenge wasn't the answer, but I still felt the need to reclaim my power. I didn't want to wallow in sadness or let Amanda dictate my emotions any longer. I needed to channel my pain into something productive. I wanted her to understand the depth of her betrayal, but I also wanted to emerge from this stronger than before. As the evening wore on, we talked about the possibility of moving on. "You've got options, man. You could make a clean break, start fresh. It's hard, but sometimes it's what you need," he encouraged. I mulled over his suggestion. What if I focused on rebuilding my life instead of getting tangled in revenge? That idea began to resonate with me. While Amanda had shattered my trust, she hadn't taken away my worth or who I was. I could rise from the ashes of this betrayal and create something new. I wanted to redirect my energy into self-improvement, to prove to myself that I could thrive despite the pain. When I returned home that night, I sat down and wrote out my thoughts in a journal. I needed to articulate what I was feeling, to lay bare my anger, my sadness, and my hopes for the future. Writing became a cathartic release, allowing me to process the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside me. I explored my feelings toward Amanda, the hurt she had caused, and my realization that I had the power to reclaim my life. As I poured my heart out onto the pages, I started to outline some goals for myself. I wanted to get back into shape, maybe even go back to the gym regularly. I'd neglected my physical health in recent months, focusing too much on trying to keep the peace in my relationship with Amanda. I wanted to rediscover who I was outside of our marriage. I also thought about diving into hobbies I had abandoned, like painting and hiking. But most importantly, I wanted to surround myself with people who genuinely cared for me, friends who would support me through this challenging time. A week passed, and each day felt like a small victory as I embraced this new mindset. I started hitting the gym again, pushing myself during workouts, finding solace in the sweat and endorphins. I also reconnected with old friends, spending time with them and sharing a few laughs, which helped take my mind off the pain for a little while. The support I received reminded me that I was loved, that I mattered, and that Amanda's betrayal didn't define me. I still had moments of anger and sadness, but they felt more manageable. I would think about Amanda and the hurt she caused, but I also found myself questioning what I truly wanted moving forward. Did I want to fight for the marriage, or was it time to cut my losses and move on? One evening, as I was unwinding at home, I received a text from Amanda. It was a simple message asking if we could talk. My gut instinct was to ignore it, to let the silence linger as a reflection of the distance between us. But I felt a flicker of curiosity. What could she possibly want to say now that I had begun to reclaim my life? After a moment of hesitation, I decided to respond. "What do you want to talk about?" Her reply came quickly, filled with an urgency that made my heart race. "Please, can we meet? I need to explain everything. I know I messed up, but I want to make it right. Can we talk in person?" Part of me wanted to agree, to hear her side of the story and see if there was any truth to her claims of wanting to fix things. But another part of me resisted, knowing the risks involved in opening that door again. Would I be stepping back into the same cycle of pain and betrayal? I took a deep breath, weighing my options. I had come so far in such a short time, and I didn't want to jeopardize my newfound strength by falling back into the emotional turmoil that had consumed me for far too long. But maybe, just maybe, it was worth hearing her out. At the very least, I could finally get the closure I needed, the answers to my burning questions. I responded cautiously, agreeing to meet. I wanted to go into this with my eyes wide open, ready to confront whatever twisted truth Amanda was about to share. While I didn't know what would happen next, I felt a sense of empowerment in knowing that I held the cards now. I was in control, and I would determine how this chapter of my life would unfold. Little did I know, the conversation we were about to have would set the stage for the final act of this tumultuous drama. The day of the meeting felt surreal. I had gone back and forth in my mind about whether meeting Amanda was a good idea or not. Part of me wanted to hear her out, to understand her motives, if there were any redeeming factors in her story. The other part of me braced itself for the possibility of more lies. I was adamant that I wouldn't let her manipulate my emotions again. I was resolute in my decision to stand strong. I arrived at the cafe where we agreed to meet, choosing a booth in the far corner. The atmosphere was calm, with soft music playing in the background and the comforting scent of coffee wafting through the air. I took a moment to collect my thoughts. I had spent the last week reclaiming my life and focusing on self-improvement, and I wasn't about to let Amanda disrupt my newfound clarity. A few minutes later, she walked in, looking different than I remembered. Her hair was neatly styled and she wore a dress that seemed too formal for a casual cafe, but I could see the tension in her posture, the way her hands fidgeted as she approached me. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the conversation we were about to have. "Jake," she said softly as she slid into the booth, "thank you for agreeing to meet." I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. "Let's just get to it, Amanda. I don't have all day." She took a moment to gather herself, her eyes flickering with uncertainty. "I know I hurt you. I can't express how sorry I am for what happened. I never meant for it to go this far." "Then why did it?" I asked, my voice steady but laced with the hurt I had been carrying. "Why did you choose to betray me?" Her eyes filled with tears, and she rubbed her temples as if trying to alleviate an invisible pressure. It was a moment of weakness. I got caught up in the excitement of it all, and I didn't think about the consequences. I know that's not an excuse, but I want You to understand that it was never about you. It was me trying to escape my own insecurities. I crossed my arms, allowing her words to sink in while fighting back the anger bubbling beneath the surface. So, you thought sleeping with someone else was the answer to your insecurities. I was unhappy, Jake, she exclaimed, her voice rising slightly. I felt like I was losing myself in our life together. I thought I could find some kind of validation elsewhere, but it backfired terribly. Validation, I echoed, incredulous. You hurt someone who loved you, who trusted you. You shattered our marriage because you were unhappy. That doesn't make any sense. I know it doesn't, she sighed, her voice trembling. I was scared and I didn't know how to communicate that to you. Instead of talking about my feelings, I took the coward's way out. I let myself be swept away by someone else's attention, and I regret it every single day. I studied her face, searching for any hint of sincerity. For a moment, I entertained the idea that she might be genuinely remorseful, but then I remembered the laughter and intimacy I had seen between her and that man. The betrayal had been too deep, too raw for my heart to forget. Do you understand that what you did was irrevocable? I pressed. You can't just expect me to take you back because you feel guilty now. I know that, she replied, her voice softer now. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I just want you to know how truly sorry I am. I will do whatever it takes to make this right. Make this right? I asked, incredulous. After everything. You think it's that simple? You think I can just forget the last few weeks of my life? I'm willing to go to counseling, to communicate better, to work on myself. I just want a chance to prove that I can be better, she said, her eyes pleading. As I listened to her, I felt a whirlwind of emotions swirling within me. Part of me wanted to believe she could change, that there was still a chance for us. But another part of me screamed in protest, reminding me of the pain and betrayal I had endured. I don't know. Amanda, I said, my voice wavering. I need time to think. I can't just jump back into this without knowing I can trust you again. Please, Jake, I understand if you need space, but can we at least try? Can we start with counseling? I want to rebuild your trust to show you that I can be the partner you deserve, she urged, her voice thick with emotion. I leaned back in the booth, letting her words resonate within me. I had spent the last week building myself back up, rediscovering my identity outside of our marriage. But did I want to throw that away for the sake of a relationship that had already crumbled? Let me think about it, I finally said, my voice steady. I need to process everything you've said, but if I decide to give this another chance, it has to be on my terms. She nodded, a flicker of hope igniting in her eyes. Thank you, Jake. I'll do whatever it takes, I promise. As I left the cafe, I felt a strange mix of emotions. I had confronted Amanda and I had stood my ground, but I also knew that the road ahead would be complicated. I needed to focus on myself first, on healing and rebuilding, before I could even consider the prospect of reconciliation. That evening, as I sat in my living room with Max curled up at my feet, I reflected on the conversation. I felt a sense of empowerment knowing that I had taken my life back into my own hands. I wasn't saying I would never forgive her, but I had realized that forgiveness was a process. It wasn't something I could rush into without fully understanding the implications. I spent the next few days focusing on my goals, hitting the gym, spending time with friends, and exploring new hobbies. I also talked to Dave again, who encouraged me to take my time and think about what I truly wanted. But as the days turned into weeks, I began to feel uncertain about the idea of going back to Amanda. Deep down, I knew that trust was the foundation of any relationship, and hers had been shattered. Could I really rebuild that trust? Or was it time to cut my losses and move on once and for all? It wasn't merely about revenge anymore. It was about self-preservation and finding a path that would lead me toward happiness. I had spent years invested in a relationship that now felt toxic, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to go back to that life. With every passing moment, I realized that the choice was ultimately mine to make. I had the power to shape my future, and I wasn't going to let Amanda's mistakes define me. The final decision loomed ahead of me, and I knew it would be one of the hardest choices I would ever have to make. But I was ready to face whatever lay ahead, to reclaim my life on my own terms. As the days stretched into weeks, I found myself standing at a crossroads, grappling with the weight of my decision. I had managed to focus on self-improvement, diving headfirst into the gym and reconnecting with friends, but the specter of Amanda's betrayal still loomed over me. I knew I needed to make a choice, and it was becoming increasingly clear that I had to prioritize my well-being. I took time to reflect on the nature of trust and love. I realized that a relationship built on betrayal could not easily be reconstructed. While Amanda had expressed her willingness to change, I couldn't shake the feeling that things would never be the same. The foundation of our marriage had been fractured, and I wasn't sure it could withstand the weight of rebuilding. One evening, as I sat on my porch with Max by my side, I felt a sense of clarity wash over me. I wanted a partner who could communicate openly, someone who valued our relationship enough to confront issues head-on rather than seeking validation through infidelity. I longed for a love that felt secure, not riddled with doubts and fears. With that realization came the resolute decision to end things with Amanda once and for all. It was time to take the final step and reclaim my life. I picked up my phone and texted her, asking if we could meet one last time. There was a flutter of anxiety in my stomach, but I knew it was the right choice. We met at a park near our home, a neutral ground that felt less charged than the cafe where we had last confronted each other. As I sat on a bench, waiting for her arrival, I felt a mix of trepidation and resolve. I could hear the sounds of children playing in the distance, the laughter punctuating the air, a stark contrast to the heaviness I felt inside. When Amanda arrived, she looked different than before, calm, composed, but I could still see the remnants of regret in her eyes. "Hey, Jake," she said softly, taking a seat next to me. "Thanks for meeting me," I began, my voice steady but firm. "I've been doing a lot of thinking." "Me too," she said, her expression hopeful. "I really want to make this work, Jake. I know I messed up, but I can change, I promise." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I needed to say. "I appreciate your willingness to try, Amanda, but I've come to a decision. I can't be with you anymore." Her expression faltered, and I could see the color drain from her face. "What? Jake, please don't say that. I can't." "No," I interrupted, raising a hand to stop her. "I need you to hear me out. What happened between us has changed everything. I can't trust you the way I once did. And I don't believe we can rebuild what's been lost." Tears welled in her eyes, but I kept my expression resolute. "I need to prioritize my well-being, and I can't do that if I'm constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering if you're being honest with me. I need to take control of my life and focus on moving forward." She shook her head, her voice trembling. "Jake, please, I love you. I want to make this work. I can change. I know you say you love me, but love isn't just about words. It's about actions. And right now, those actions have shown me that I can't trust you," I replied, my tone unwavering. "I'll do anything," she cried, her voice rising in desperation. "I'll go to therapy, I'll prove it to you. But what if that's not enough?" I challenged, my heart aching at her pain. "I've invested so much in this relationship already, and I can't keep living in uncertainty. I need to focus on my own happiness right now." As I finished my statement, I felt a sense of weight lift from my shoulders. I had made my choice. And while it was painful to see her hurt, I knew it was the right decision for both of us. "I'm sorry, Amanda," I said softly, my voice steady but filled with compassion. "I wish you well, really. I hope you find happiness, but I can't be a part of that anymore." She looked at me, her expression a mixture of hurt and bewilderment. "I never wanted to hurt you. I was just lost," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I know," I replied, my heart heavy with empathy. "But we can't go back to what we had. It's time for both of us to move on." We sat in silence for a moment, the reality of the situation washing over us. I felt a pang of sadness for the relationship that once brought so much joy, but I also felt a sense of liberation. I was reclaiming my life, my autonomy, and my peace of mind. As we parted ways, I took one last look at Amanda. Despite the heartache, I felt a flicker of hope within me. I was ready to embrace the unknown, to explore what lay ahead without the burden of betrayal weighing me down. In the weeks that followed, I dedicated myself to self-discovery. I traveled, spent time with friends, and delved into hobbies that had long been neglected. I rediscovered my passion for painting, finding solace and expression in each stroke. I focused on my health, pushing myself to run longer distances and challenge my physical limits. And as I embraced my newfound freedom, I realized that I had grown stronger. The pain of betrayal had transformed into a lesson about self-worth and resilience. I was no longer defined by Amanda's actions, but by how I chose to rise above them. I learned the importance of setting boundaries, of prioritizing my happiness, and of understanding that love should never come with strings attached. I may have lost a partner, but I had gained a deeper understanding of who I was and what I wanted in life. The journey was far from over, but I was finally ready to embrace the future, one filled with possibilities and a renewed sense of hope. I had weathered the storm, and I was ready to step into the sunlight again, stronger than ever before.